what's pretty clear is that Putin is pushing as hard as he possibly can to get all of his objectives achieved by then. And he will not want 20th of January to come with Ukraine still holding a small enclave in the Russian area of the Kursk. He's pushing hard, 50,000 troops there, a lot of North Korean troops as well. And anything that can be done to help Ukraine stay there is what President Biden is trying to do. And that's why he's authorized these missiles to be used.
Significant developments yesterday in Russia as President Putin lowered the threshold for a nuclear strike on the West. That was just hours after Ukraine attacked Russian territory with American long-range missiles, something they've been wanting to do for months. In response, the Russian president signed a decree updating the country's nuclear weapons doctrine to allow their use in retaliation for attacks on its territory with, this is the critical bit, Western-supplied weapons. And we may be supplying those Storm Shadow missiles too. Let's find out more. Sean Bell is the military analyst and host of the Red Matrix podcast, who often sort of helps us steer through these developments. Sean, good morning.
Good morning to you, Rosie.
Explain what happened yesterday in terms of its significance in Ukraine using those US missiles.
Well, it's been a lot talked about, these attack missiles, the Army Tactical Missile System. I mean, they're a very capable missile system. They're supersonic. They go ballistic, travel 200 miles. The downside, though, of them is they only have a 500-pound warhead, so they're not that big a bang for the buck. And also, there's not that many of them. They're incredibly expensive, over $1 million a pop. And therefore, they're hardly going to be deluging the Russian defenses at all. The other challenge is that because they travel 200 miles, you can't easily target something. You have to use satellite technology and use a whole range of capabilities to make sure you understand where the target is. And it'll be there in the few minutes it takes for the missile to travel there. So this is a micro step, really, in terms of actual missile military capability on the ground. It's not that significant. What is significant is the fact that, when we gave a lot of missiles and weapons to the Ukrainians, we said, you can't use them exactly as you see fit. Rather than just saying, look, use them in accordance with the law of armed conflict, up to you how to use them. The danger of the way we did it was now that when you take those restrictions away, President Putin starts wailing. And all of this stuff about nuclear rhetoric, I think I'm very much the view, very much like General Breedlove, as you quoted earlier. Frankly, every step of the way, what Putin's trying to do is stop the West getting more closely involved in this conflict. And the way that he's been doing it every step of the way is to rattle that nuclear saber. And nothing's actually happening. He's absolutely on no benefit whatsoever for pressing the nuclear button, but he knows it scares the West, and he knows it causes the West to step back from the brink of helping. And that is why Russia has maintained itself on the front foot, even as we speak, on the battlefields.
So is Putin bluffing?
Bluntly, yes. If nothing's actually changed, and neither of us are quite old enough to remember the Cuban Missile Crisis, but that was the only time in my history where both sides have actually started to put nuclear weapons onto the tips of nuclear missiles, have actually got them airborne. That is when the nuclear states got very high. At the moment, this is nothing more than bluffing. And as I say, we've been talking about this for the last 2.5 years. The irony here, of course, is that this should never have happened in the first place. The West should just literally get on with providing the support that's required. Let's face it, Russia has been attacking Ukrainian energy infrastructure, its logistics hubs, its airfields, and it's been doing so with impunity. To stop Ukraine fighting back means that effectively we're tying one arm behind Ukraine's back, and that's just quite bizarre. Things are not going well at the moment on the ground for Ukraine, and that's why President Biden has decided just to provide every possible help. And there's one caveat here, Rosie. These aren't being clear to use across the whole of Russia. What they are being clear to use is that if, and it's a huge if we're heading closer to the point of a negotiated settlement, let's face it, President Trump-elect is talking about the war being over in 24 hours. He takes over on the 20th of January. What's pretty clear is President Putin is pushing as hard as he possibly can to get all of his objectives achieved by then. And he will not want 20th of January to come with Ukraine still holding a small enclave in the Russian area of the Kursk. He's pushing hard, 50,000 troops there, a lot of North Korean troops as well. And anything that can be done to help Ukraine stay there is what President Biden is trying to do. And that's why he's authorized these missiles to be used.
Yeah. We are hearing, you mentioned what's happening on the ground, Sean, that the Russian military is accelerating gains along the front line in Ukraine, even in Kursk. Can you tell us what's happening?
Well, yes. I mean, in Kursk, you'll recall back in August when the Ukrainians did this surprise move and pushed into Kursk. Since that time, they've been pushed out of about a third of the region, potentially up to half the region they once held. Now, to be fair, they probably weren't that well dug in. But the point is that Russia has decided they're going to push and try and push them out. More importantly, I suspect, down in the Donbass region, which is the principal area of fighting, Russian forces have gained a bit of momentum. Now, we have to be careful again with the statistics here. The statistics you referred to talk about last year and this year. And there's no doubt that Russia this year has been on the front foot. But actually, we were expecting by now that Russia would have taken Pokrovsk, which is probably a town nobody's heard of, but it's in the Donbass and really was expected to fall. Actually, Ukrainians have held out. Russia has slowed down. It's not a great fighting season at the moment. It's very cold. It's very wet and damp. And until about another month's time, when the ground freezes over, makes it really difficult to fight. So it's not accelerating day by day, but this year has definitely been a more successful year for Russia on the ground than it had been last year.